Hi, welcome to the 10th video for Unit 5 for a AP Environmental Science. In this video, we're going to be looking at the impacts of urbanization. So, when we talk about urbanization, we typically look at suburbs. And a suburb is an area surrounding a metro area center. Typically, it has a comparatively low population density as people are able to spread out a little bit more. More than 90% of the population growth since 1950 has occurred in suburbs. An exurb is similar to a suburb, but this is unconnected to the central city or a densely populated area. These are areas where large populations live, but maybe not connected. It's very similar other than that, though. So this is the United States, and broken down by county. You can see that the red would have a large central metro, and then large fringe, medium, small, micropolitans, and then non-core, where those counties would not have a major city in them. You can see that Washoe County for us has what is considered to be a medium metro. Reno, Sparks would be medium. In the south, you see Las Vegas would be a large central metro. Now, as time has gone by, the urban populations have finally, in 2010, or just before 2010, surpassed the rural population. More people living in urban areas than in rural areas in the United States. This shows you it's a really nice visual of some of the most densely populated cities in the world and how their density of population looks, where they are in the city. So you can kind of see there's these giant peaks in certain areas where most people live. You have Mumbai and Hong Kong and New York City, and then some other areas like London that are a little more spread out and not as densely populated in a specific area. Now, urban sprawl is what we'll look at, but urban sprawl is just the spread effect, where you get the urban area in the central spreading its way out more and more, and the needs of those areas being the reason for the sprawl. One of the issues here is saltwater intrusion. So saltwater intrusion is a major concern commonly found in coastal aquifers around the world. Saltwater intrusion is the induced flow of seawater into freshwater aquifers, primarily caused by groundwater development near the coast. Where groundwater is being pumped from aquifers that are in hydraulic connection with the sea, induced gradients can cause the migration of saltwater from the sea towards a well, making the freshwater well unusable. So by overpumping a freshwater aquifer near saltwater, it is causing saltwater to be brought in. And this is looking in a case study in Savannah, Georgia, where the urban area aquifers, because of urban sprawl, have become contaminated. Now, just looking at that small circle right there, that is where more people live inside that circle than outside of it. So most of the population of the world is in Southeast Asia. You probably already knew that. Now, areas with population density over 15 people per square kilometer, this just shows you the world map. You can see mostly coastal areas. Now, what is urban sprawl? We talked about that. The idea here is that urbanized areas are spreading into rural areas, which gets rid of clear boundaries between the two. So you can't tell where an urban center ends because of how it spreads. Some of the causes, one of the major causes is the advent of the automobile and the development of the interstate highway system. The interstate highway system has been able to connect more and more people, allowing people to live farther from where they work or from the center of a city. Another cause is living costs. As little low-income or affordable housing exists, most of the homes are single-family homes, and this can cause some commuting difficulties. So looking at urban versus suburban, it's much more expensive to live in a suburban area than in an urban area. But it may be more beneficial to live in a suburban area compared to an urban area. People that live in an urban area may be forced to live in that urban area because of their income. This is what causes what is known as urban blight, where social environments and built environments are degraded in a city that often accompanies and accelerates migration to the suburbs. So people that can afford it leave instead of making it better so that it's more habitable and more acceptable. Now, gentrification is kind of the opposite issue. And gentrification is where people are bringing in more expensive housing, more expensive companies and businesses into an area that was formerly an urban blight. And this forces low-income people out. Now, there are federal and local laws and policies in place that can also be attributed to urban sprawl. The Highway Trust Fund in 1956 essentially created the gasoline tax that pays for the construction and maintenance of highways, and it's essentially a feedback loop. As you have more traffic congestion, you get longer commutes, which means more gas has to be used, which means there's more revenues for gas tax, which means more highways are built, which means more suburbs expand, which causes more increased congestion, and so on and so forth. A positive feedback loop, in case you don't know, a positive feedback loop is one that continues to avalanche or snowball out of control. Some other things that are done are zoning laws, which separate businesses and industry from people and where they live. Multi-use zoning is considered to be a little more progressive, where people are allowed to live and have industries and businesses in the same areas. Another thing that was put in place was the federally subsidized mortgages through FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration. The FHA is also known as the First-Time Homeowners Loan, which created low interest rates, but it was only allowed for low-risk areas, which were considered to be, of course, the suburbs, which could be contributed to another cause of forcing people into suburbs that have more money, more economic advantages, causing the urban centers to become even more degraded. Now, some of the consequences of urban sprawl: more fossil fuels are used, twice as much land per person is used in urban sprawled areas like suburban areas than in cities, and it replaces farmland, which can increase the distance from an urban center to farms. So we're going to look specifically now at 10 principles by the EPA that are considered to be part of smart growth. And so this image, before we get into that, just shows you some of the downsides to urban sprawl. So we're going to look at the set of principles that were put in place or are recommended by the EPA as strategies to encourage the development of sustainable, healthy communities. The first being to create mixed land uses so that you can have many different things in the same area. The second is to create a range of housing opportunities and choices, so there are multiple types of housing choices for people to live. Another one is the third is to create walkable neighborhoods so that people don't have to drive to get to work, to get to the store, and to get to places for entertainment. The fourth is to encourage community and stakeholder collaboration in development decisions, essentially letting the community have their own input in development decisions. Number 5 is to take advantage of compact building designs, essentially creating houses that are smaller and taller, as opposed to creating huge homes that use more space. This image just shows you maybe a townhome versus a traditional single-family home. The sixth is to foster a sense of place. So in New Orleans, for instance, the area has a very distinct and meaningful character, so there's a buy-in by the community to want to be there. The seventh is to preserve open space, farmland, and natural beauty, and critical environmental areas. This is something that is also in place by some laws and regulations that say when you build a new housing community, a certain percentage of it has to be open space, parks, and the likes. Reno is a very good example of areas where you can find a lot of open space in neighborhoods because of the regulations that are in place. Number 8 is to provide a variety of transportation choices. Transit-oriented development is the idea where you make sure that everything that is developed and built can have transit in mind, public transportation in particular. 9th is to strengthen and direct development toward existing communities instead of growing and sprawling, looking at the current areas that need to be updated through infill and having urban growth boundaries where you can't go outside of a certain area and you have to build within the current area. And the 10th is to make development decisions predictable, fair, and cost-effective, streamlining the approval processes for these things to make it so that it is encouraged to have positive development. So that brings us to the end of the 10th video. Our next video will be all about environmental footprints.